The crash came before the scream. Tires screeched, metal twisted, and glass shattered like thunder exploding in daylight. For a moment, time froze. Then silence fell. Only the faint sound of a drum, distant and ghostly, echoed through the wind. Hours earlier, Chuka had been laughing. The farewell ceremony at Obodo Ije village was alive with drums, palm wine, and the laughter of NYSC members who had completed their one-year service. The king's palace glowed under the fading sun. Chuka, tall, confident, and quick-tongued, stood beside his friend Azine, waving to villagers who cheered them on. "You'll miss this place," Azine said with a smile, wiping sweat from her forehead. Chuka scoffed. "Miss what? This bush? I've had enough of mosquitoes and folk tales. I'm ready for Lagos." Azine glanced at the palace throne, where the golden crown sat on a carved stool beside the old king. "Just don't joke with their traditions, Chuka. That crown? People say it's not ordinary." He laughed, loud enough for nearby villagers to hear. "Superstitions. You people believe anything. A crown is just gold and metal, nothing more." But that crown caught his eyes again and again. It shimmered each time the light touched it, as if calling to him. By the time the drums died down that evening, the thought had already planted itself in his mind. If I take it, who will know? That night, when everyone was asleep, Chuka crept out of his lodge. The moon glowed faintly, silvering the palace walls. He slipped through the courtyard and entered the hall. The crown sat where it always did, untouched, unguarded, shining softly like it was alive. He hesitated. His hands trembled. "I just need to hold it," he whispered. But the moment his fingers wrapped around the metal, a gust of cold air rushed through the room. The oil lamp flickered out. Somewhere deep within the palace, a drum began to beat, slow, rhythmic, heavy. Chuka froze. He waited. Nothing happened. He chuckled nervously and slid the crown into his travel bag. "Nothing supernatural," he whispered to himself. "Just the wind." At dawn, the NYSC bus rumbled to life. Bags piled high on the roof, corps members laughing, snapping pictures. Chuka sat by the window, his bag between his feet. Adzina joined him. "You didn't sleep well," she said. "Maybe too much palm wine," he replied, forcing a smile. His heart was pounding. The bus roared down the dusty road out of the village. As they passed the palace gates, an eerie wind howled, bending the palm trees. The driver made the sign of the cross. "This wind no puro," he muttered. 30 minutes later, laughter filled the bus again. Someone played a song on their phone. Everyone sang along. The world felt normal, until it didn't. The first sign was the smell of burning rubber. Then a loud pop. A tire burst. The bus swerved violently. Screams filled the air. The driver slammed the brakes, but they failed. "Jesus! Jesus!" someone shouted. The bus tumbled off the road, rolling into the bush. Metal crunched, glass shattered, and bodies slammed against seats. When everything stopped, smoke rose from the wreck. The song had ended. Chuka opened his eyes to chaos. Blood, silence, then faint cries. Azina was motionless beside him. He shook her, tears spilling. "Azina, wake up." She didn't. He crawled out of the wreckage, his shirt soaked in dust and blood. The bag was still clutched to his chest. Somewhere behind him, survivors moaned. The smell of petrol filled the air. And then he heard it. The sound that made his heart freeze. Drums. Faint, rhythmic, and coming from nowhere. "Who's there?" he whispered, spinning around. The bush was silent, yet the drumming continued, closer now, echoing in his ears. He stumbled away from the wreck, trembling. The wind whispered his name. "Chuka, return what you took." He fell to his knees, gasping. It's just in my head," he said. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. Later that night, when help finally arrived, the police counted bodies. 8 dead, the rest injured. They called it brake failure. But when Chuka got home to Okporo town, his mother hugged him tightly, sobbing with joy. "God saved you, my son. You must pray and thank him." Chuka nodded numbly. He couldn't tell her that God wasn't the only one watching. The next day, his younger brother Ifeanyi fell ill. Doctors said malaria, but medicine did nothing. The boy burned with fever and screamed in his sleep, "Masquerades! They're here!" 3 nights later, he died. Their father collapsed the same day, half his body frozen, his mouth twisted in a silent cry. By the 4th night, Chuka began to hear the drums again. Soft at first, then louder. Each beat echoed inside his head. "Return it." He turned off the lights, sweating, muttering prayers. "God, please. I didn't mean to offend anyone." But the spirits didn't care. The shadows in his room moved on their own, his mirror fogged with strange handprints. He heard dancing feet outside his window, though no one was there. He screamed, waking his mother. "They're here! Can't you hear them?" She held him, crying. "My son, you brought something home. Whatever it is, take it back." He shook his head violently. "No, Mama. If I go back, I'll die." But deep down, he knew she was right. That night, he opened his travel bag. The crown glowed faintly, even in the dark. It looked more alive than ever, like it was breathing. He fell to the floor, whispering, "What have I done?" The drums began again, louder, faster. "Return it!" He clutched his ears and screamed. If you've been watching this far, my friend, remember, some things are not just stories. They are warnings. If you believe that prayer has no power, think again. Before you travel, before you take a step out of your home, always pray. Evil doesn't warn before it strikes. And if you're still with me, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. I believe in prayer below. Because what happens next in this story will shake you. The night that followed felt endless. Chuka lay on the floor, trembling, his palms pressed against his ears, as the sound of drums rolled through the darkness like thunder from the underworld. The crown on the table glimmered with every beat, as though it was alive, breathing, watching, waiting. By morning, he hadn't slept. His eyes were red, his voice hoarse. When his mother entered his room with a tray of food, she froze. The air was thick, heavy, and cold. "Chuka," she whispered, "have you prayed today?" He shook his head slowly. "Mama, I think something is in this house." Her gaze fell on the travel bag. "That same bags again. What are you hiding?" He swallowed hard. "Just clothes and memories." "Then burn it," she said firmly. "Burn everything from that village." He tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. "Burn it? Mama, if I touch that thing, I might die." That afternoon, he left the house to clear his head. But the world outside didn't feel normal either. At the junction, people stared at him strangely, as if they knew. The air felt heavier around him. Even the wind whispered. At the church nearby, he slipped inside quietly and knelt before the altar. "Father, forgive me," he whispered. "I don't know what's following me, but please, make it stop." A hand touched his shoulder. The old church caretaker, Papa Kane, looked down at him with kind but worried eyes. "Young man, prayers are good," he said softly, "but some battles need more than words. What did you bring from that land?" Chuka's mouth went dry. I don't understand." Papa Kane studied him silently, then nodded toward the door. "Come back tonight. I will take you to someone who understands these things better." That night, thunder cracked across the sky. Rain began to fall heavily. Chuka sat by his window, restless, glancing at the bag again and again. Then, bang, his light bulb exploded. Darkness swallowed the room. The drums began again, louder this time, closer. He saw shadows moving along his wall, tall figures with masks that glowed faintly in the dark. Their feet beat the rhythm of the drums. "Return it!" He stumbled backward, crashing into the wall. "Leave me alone. I'll return it tomorrow." The figures stopped. Silence. Only the rain remained. When morning came, he didn't wait. He wrapped the crown in a cloth, shoved it into the bag, and ran through the rain toward the church. Papa Kana was already waiting at the gate with a lantern. "You're ready?" the old man asked. "I don't care what happens," Chuka gasped. "I just want peace." Papa Kana nodded. "Then follow me." They trekked through the narrow back streets until they reached a small compound by the forest edge. A dim lantern glowed from inside. The smell of herbs and burning incense filled the air. Inside sat an elderly woman with long gray hair wrapped in a scarf. Her eyes were sharp but kind. "You brought trouble from another world," she said, before Chuka could even speak. Chuka froze. "How do you know?" She smiled faintly. "Because the spirits entered this room before you did." He fell to his knees. "Please, help me. I didn't mean to steal. I thought it was just a crown, just gold." The woman, known as Mama Nunkum, a respected seer, motioned for him to open the bag. The moment he unwrapped the cloth, the crown glowed, casting strange shadows across the walls. Mama Nunkum hissed under her breath. "Ah, Obodo Ije's royal crown. Foolish boy, do you know what this means? That crown is bound by oath. It was never meant to leave that palace. You carried a covenant away from its roots." Chuka's voice cracked. "Can I return it? Will that end all this?" She shook her head slowly. "To return it, you must pass through the same path you took. But the spirits guarding it will not allow you to walk freely. They demand a sacrifice, not of blood, but of repentance. You must confess before the ancestors, and the king must accept your words." He stared at her helplessly. "If I go back there, they'll kill me." "Better to face man's judgment than the spirit's wrath," she said coldly. Thunder rumbled again outside. The wind blew through the open door, snuffing out the lantern. Then, suddenly, the drums started again. Right there in the room, invisible feet stomped around them. The crown began to vibrate. Chuka screamed and grabbed his head. "They're here! They're here!" Mama Nunkum stood, chanting quickly in a deep ancient tongue. Papa Kone sprinkled palm oil around the room. The floor trembled as the drums grew louder. Then silence. The crown stopped glowing. Mama Nkem sighed. "You have 2 days. If you do not return that crown before the third sunrise, these spirits will claim what they believe belongs to them. Your soul." Chuka's heart raced. 2 days? That's not enough time. "Enough to decide if you want life or death," she said firmly. He nodded slowly, gripping the bag. "Then I'll go." As he left the hut, Papa Kane called after him. "Pray before you take a single step. The road you travel is no longer ordinary." The rain had stopped, but the clouds still hung low, gray and heavy. He boarded an old commercial bus heading back to Obodo Ij. Every pothole felt like a heartbeat. As the journey dragged on, he tried to stay calm. He prayed under his breath, whispering, "God, please don't let me die. Please, forgive me." Halfway there, the driver turned on the radio. A preacher's voice filled the air. "When you travel, plead the blood of Jesus, for unseen forces wait on careless souls." Chuka shivered. "The passengers murmured. "Amen." But when he looked out the window, he saw something that made his blood run cold. By the roadside stood Izina. Her white NYSC uniform was spotless, her face expressionless. He blinked. She was gone. He gasped, clutching his chest. "Driver, stop!" The driver frowned. "What'd happen?" I thought I saw someone I know." The driver said, shaking his head. "Brother, pray-o. Sometimes the dead know they sleep well." Chuka sat back, shaking uncontrollably. No, he muttered. "It can't be her." The bus continued down the winding road as lightning flashed across the sky. He could swear he heard faint drumming again, mixed with Izina's laughter from that day. He closed his eyes and whispered, "God, give me strength. I'll return it. I'll make it right." If you've stayed this long, my friend, remember, some mistakes don't show their cost until it's too late. When you travel, don't forget to whisper a prayer. Even a single "Lord, guide me" can save your life. And if you believe prayer still works, type "God, protect me on every journey" in the comments. Stay tuned, because what happens when Chuka reaches that village will chill your soul. The road back to Obodo Ije was darker than Chuka remembered. The trees leaned inward, their branches like arms stretching to touch him. The air grew thicker with every mile. His torchlight flickered even though the batteries were new. Beside him, Prophet Madhu hummed softly, his eyes half closed, lips moving in prayer. They walked until the moon hung low and swollen. The path opened into the village square, silent, lifeless. The drums that once sang of joy now echoed like mourning cries in the distance. "Madhu," Chuka whispered, "where is everyone?" The prophet didn't answer. He was staring at the palace. The gate stood open, swaying slightly, as if inviting them in. "You must go alone," Madhu said finally. "They're waiting for you." Chuka's mouth went dry. "No. Please. You said you'd help me." "I already have." The prophet's eyes glowed faintly. "Go, son of Okoro. It is between you and what you awakened." Before Chuka could reply, Madhu turned and vanished into the trees. No sound of footsteps, nothing. Chuka stood there, trembling. He clutched the bag with the crown. "God, please, let this end." As he stepped into the palace courtyard, the ground beneath him throbbed faintly, like a heartbeat. Every wall was covered in ancient symbols that shimmered as his torch passed over them. At the center of the courtyard stood the throne, and upon it sat the king. But his eyes were gone. Two dark hollows stared back at Chuka. "You have returned," a voice said. Not from the king's mouth, but from all around. Chuka fell to his knees. "Forgive me, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know." The shadows behind the throne began to move. Figures dressed in white, their faces covered with masks carved from wood and bone. The masquerades, the ones from his brother's dreams. They circled him slowly, their drums beating in perfect rhythm with his racing heart. "You took what was bound by blood," the voice thundered. "The crown is not gold. It is life. Every king's spirit dwells within it. When you touched it, you carried them away from their resting place." Tears poured down Chuka's face. "Please, take it back. I'll do anything." The masked figure stopped. The crown inside the bag began to hum, a deep vibration that filled the air. It lifted itself out, glowing fiercely. The metal turned red, like molten fire, spinning above his head. "Return what you stole," the voice demanded again. Chuka grabbed the crown with shaking hands and set it gently on the ground. The moment it touched the earth, a wind tore through the palace, howling, cold, furious. The masquerade screamed. The king's body crumbled into dust. Then silence. Chuka blinked. The crown was gone. The courtyard was empty. The torches along the wall burst to life again, warm and golden. For the first time in months, he felt peace. He exhaled shakily. "It's over." He turned to leave, but froze. Standing by the gate was Izina. Her white gown fluttered softly in the breeze. Her face was calm, but her eyes, Those eyes burned with sadness. Azina? His voice cracked. You're alive? She smiled faintly. You still don't understand, Chuka. He stumbled toward her, reaching out. Azina, I thought you died that day. I did, she whispered. And so did you. Chuka's breath caught. What? You never left the crash, she said gently. You died clutching that crown. The others passed on, but you were trapped, bound to what you stole. Every step you took, every scream you heard, every shadow that followed you, it wasn't a haunting, Chuka. It was judgment. He staggered back, shaking his head violently. No, I came home. I saw my mother, my brother. They were dreams, she said softly. Fragments of what you wished you could fix. The wind blew harder, carrying the faint echo of drums again, slower now, almost like a heartbeat fading away. Azine walked closer, placing a cold hand on his cheek. It's time to rest. You've paid enough. Tears streamed down his face. I don't want to die. You already did, she whispered. The palace lights dimmed, the courtyard filled with light, blinding, pure, and peaceful. The masked spirits knelt, the drums slowed until they were no more. When the light faded, the palace was empty again. Weeks later, the villagers of Obodo Ije finally reopened the road where the crash had happened. They built a small shrine by the roadside, a wooden cross, surrounded by candles and flowers. Travelers who passed by always said the same thing. When the wind blew, you could hear faint drumming. But if you stopped to pray, the sound vanished. Old women whispered that the spirit of a proud young man found peace only when he learned that no journey is safe without God. And every evening, when the sun dipped low, children would point at the hill and say, "That's where the man who mocked the crown finally knelt before heaven." If you've watched this far, remember, life is fragile. Sometimes, it's not the road that kills. It's what we carry in our hearts. Before you travel, before you drive, before you even take a step, say a prayer. Because protection isn't in the car you drive, it's in the God you serve. And if this story touched you, please, don't scroll past. Like this video, drop a comment saying, "I will always pray before I travel," and share this with someone you care about. You might just save a life tonight. Because for Chuka, the prayer came too late.